Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you to today's webinar of the weekly current affairs where we discuss the most important current affairs from the last week. I hope all of you are doing good. Good evening, everyone. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let others also join in the class and then we will begin. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Hi, good evening. Good evening. I'm doing good. Collectively, to everyone, those who are asking, I'm doing good. Thank you so much. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Perfect. So, once again, a very warm welcome to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. This is a time to revise the weekly current affairs, the most important news stories that we saw from the prelims examination point of view in the last week or so. That is what we will be discussing in today's session. Also, before we do that, as you know, the mains test series has already begun from the 4th of June. This gives you a lot of opportunity to practice answer writing, make sure that you get feedback and you incorporate that feedback in the next test so that your session and your score only keeps improving. Please make sure that you give all these tests. Doesn't matter if you're not well prepared, doesn't matter if you think that you still have a long time to go, but at least make sure that you attempt these tests. There are a total of 15 tests, 10 of these modular and 5 of these will be full length tests. This is what we have from the prelims examination point of view. These are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. First topic that we'll be discussing in Niti Aayog's health index that recently came out. It has given rankings for different states, union territories, etc. on various parameters. Please remember this health index is not of the last year. It actually is running a couple of years behind. So it is of the COVID year 2020-21. That was a year according to which the health index of Niti Aayog has been released. So we'll be discussing that. Second topic that we'll be discussing is something called the PMI or Purchasing Manager Index. We'll be discussing what that is, why is it in the news, what significance does it have for the economy, how does it work, etc. Then third topic that we'll be taking up is about the XPOSAT, a new mission that has been planned by ISRO to collect even more data from the space. The fourth index will be the fourth topic rather will be the Global Slavery Index of 2023, where India surprisingly has not got a very good rank. We'll be discussing what do we mean by modern form of slavery, how does it work, do India or does India also have this modern form of slavery, how can we control that, etc., etc. Then we'll be discussing about the People Biodiversity Register. The People Biodiversity Register is an initiative by the government of India to ensure that all the biodiversity in India is collected in the proper data form. Then there is something very interesting that was in the news, that is ambergris. We'll be discussing what that is, how does it work, how is it important commercially. Then we had the new chief vigilance commissioner who was appointed just a few days back. This also gives us the chance to look into the working of the CVC, that is the Central Vigilance Commission. How does it work, how was it formed, who are the members here, what is their job, etc. And in the end we'll be discussing about Ahilya Bai Holkar. The reason being that a city, a district in Maharashtra, that is Ahmednagar, is now being renamed after the Ahilya Bai Holkar. That is a very famous personality of our past. We'll be discussing about her contribution also in India's cultural history. These are the topics that we have taken up for you today. So without waiting any further, let's quickly start the session for today with the very first topic. The first topic that we have here is the Niti Aayog Health Index. Before I go ahead, I will remind you once again what I said just a few minutes back. This health index by the Niti Aayog is not of this year, is not of last year. It is running a few years behind. So it is actually health index of the COVID year, the time that India was suffering from COVID. So it is mostly about 2020, 21. So it is actually giving us the performance of different states depending upon how much investment have they made in their health infrastructure, depending on how the health infrastructure is good or is not good for their people. There are different categories of states. Usually, as expected, states such as Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, they are usually expected to do well, and they have done well. They have remained at the top of this index. The surprising part is amongst the union territories, Delhi has performed the worst in this index. Now, let's see what exactly was the result of this index. Now, first, as I said, index has categorized the states into different categories. First, larger state. The larger state category has about 19 states, out of which Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana have occupied the first, second, and the third place. Something that you do expect usually from these states. Apart from that, if you look at towards the bottom half of this table of the larger states, again, some of those states which unfortunately you have gotten used to seeing right there at the bottom. Bihar, UP, and Madhya Pradesh are towards the bottom of this list. On the other hand, if you look at the smaller states, among the smaller states, there are 8 of them. Tripura has had the best overall performance. Then there's Sikkim, and then there's Goa. Right at the bottom, we have Manipur that also has been in the news for a lot of very, very bad reasons. All of these are the results, the findings of this health index that has been prepared by the Niti Aayog. Now, if you see, this category also is about the union territories. Amongst the union territory category, Lakshadweep has been ranked as a top performer, while on the other hand, Delhi has been ranked at the very bottom, which is pretty surprising. Surprising for a lot of reasons. You have seen the Delhi government, for example, making a lot of promotion about their health infrastructure, making a lot of claims about Mohalla clinic and other kind of infrastructure. So it's pretty surprising to see Delhi being ranked at the bottom, but it is also because the population pressure that Delhi has as compared to most other states and most other cities is not that low. Delhi has a lot of population pressure. A lot of people come to Delhi for their treatment, expecting a good quality treatment. Delhi unfortunately fares at the bottom when it comes to union territory category. Now, the index also talks about which state or UT has improved the most as compared to the last year. So the index also talks about incremental performance. Incremental means as compared to the last year, what is the performance of the particular state or the UT this year? In terms of incremental performance, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, and Odisha have been the top performers. If you compare their performance from 2019-20 to 2020-21, they have been the ones that have made the biggest improvement. These are the major findings. Now, the question is, what is this annual health index? What does it do? What is this initiative all about? As we discussed, this is an initiative by the Niti Aayog. I hope all of you have read about Niti Aayog. If not, Niti Aayog is an executive body formed by the Government of India. It came up in 2015 to replace something called the Planning Commission. What does Niti Aayog do? If you have to define Niti Aayog in some simple terms, you can say that this is the government's think tank. This is the think tank of the government of India. Now, what do you mean by a think tank? Let me try and give you a very simple example. Let's assume that the Prime Minister or the government decides that they want to increase the income of the farmers, or they decide we want to double the income of the farmers. So how would they do that? What should be the policies implemented by them? What should be the laws made about it? All that is something that is suggested to the government by the Niti Aayog. So Niti Aayog acts as a think tank to the government, advising on major policy issues, advising on major laws, also releasing many reports where they rank different states and UTs to encourage different states to improve their performance. This is what Niti Aayog usually does. Niti Aayog has one more very interesting job. For example, let's take an example. Let's say there are 4 or 5 states that are suffering from a big problem. Let's take a hypothetical example. Let's say there are some states in India. suffering with the problem of malaria. Okay, so there are a lot of malaria cases going on. All of a sudden, it was found out that one particular state was able to control malaria through whatever initiatives that they have taken. Now, it becomes Niti Aayog's responsibility. They will study what exactly happened in that state that they were able to improve, and then they will spread that information amongst the other states as well. So Niti Aayog also tries to spread the best practices that have been employed by states and union territories in different areas. It can be education, it can be health, it can be other fields as well. This is what Niti Aayog usually does. So Niti Aayog started this annual health index again to indicate to the different state that they need to perform better, to tell the state that they need to improve to come at par with the other states as well. In 2017, Niti Aayog started this in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, along with the World Bank. They have been tracking different states in different categories and the union territories as well. As I said, the objective is very simple. The idea is to ensure that all the states and UTs get a reality check about the infrastructure of health in their respective states, whether they are able to provide proper healthcare facilities to these residents or not, and if they are ranking low, then they should improve. That is the entire idea of such a health index. Now, how does it measure? How does it give the rankings? Usually, they decide and they give a report on incremental performance. As I just said, incremental performance means how much have the states improved as compared to the last year. This is where we saw Odisha doing very well. Apart from that, they also give overall performance. So, overall, what is the performance of the state? Also, if you look at the score that is given by Niti Aayog, it is usually based on 24 indicators. These are across three different domains: health outcomes, so the health standards of people living in a particular state; governance and information, what are different types of rules, policies, etc., in a certain state with regards to health; and third, the key inputs and processes. These are the different types of parameters that are taken into consideration. Based on these parameters, different scores are given. Based on those scores, there are different rankings that are released by the Niti Aayog. These are the rankings that we are discussing today in the annual health index. Now, if you look at some of the other things that the health index does in health outcomes, what they look into is how much immunization, vaccination, etc., has been done, what is the sex ratio at birth, how many deliveries are happening in the hospitals as compared to homes, etc. This is the first category, that was the health outcome category. Second category, as I said, was governance and information. It is about how many hospitals does a state have, what is the occupancy ratio in the hospitals, do they have medical officers, etc., do they have enough funds from the side of the government or not. These are some of the indicators taken into consideration. The third category of parameters is called key inputs and processes. For example, do we have different types of specialist units or not? Units for cardiac patients? Do we have a lot of vacancies in healthcare positions? Do we have district medical officer or not? All these are indicators taken into consideration, based on which the Niti Aayog prepares a report and then they publish a report for the public. This is what the annual health index is. Let's solve this question, and then after that I'll be taking up some of your question that you have given to me. Please read this question carefully. Can you see the third option? If you cannot see the third option, I will switch off my camera for a bit. Can you see the third option? Should I switch off my camera? Can you see the third option? Visible? Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, read this carefully. Let me know once you have read this. I'll start your time. Right? Should we start the time? Your time has begun. and your time is over. 59% people were able to answer this. Not a difficult question, I would say. This is B. Second and third statements are correct. The first one is wrong because the index started in 2017 and not in 2016. If you look at the other two statements, they are absolutely correct. As we had discussed, it gives overall performance of the states also, and it also compares the performance of a state with respect to last year. And the third statement is also absolutely true. Perfect. Before I move on to the next topic, let me quickly take up a few comments or a few questions from your end. Dilip has a question. This year, PT was full of facts, how to deal with it. Dilip, I hope you have attended the Thursday webinar. In Thursday webinar, we did discuss a lot about the prelims. You can see that the simple idea is the questions and the prelims have always been similar. There is no change in the question, just that the kind of option that you get was different. As the options were different, the only thing that you have to do is be more sure about the options before you take. As simple as that. Then I have a question from Nikita. What are the main aspects of news that we have to note down for our notes? Nikita, the entire PPT, all the fact that we are discussing in these current affair webinars, all of this is important. Urvashi saying Niti Aayog Health Index motive. Urvashi, the motive is simple, to tell the reality to different states if they want to improve so that they can see where they stand right now. It also acts as a motivator to the common public that you should ask questions to your state governments if they are not being able to improve their performance. Then I have a question from Pulkit. Since this index is of 2020-21, does it hold any importance after almost 2.5 years? Pulkit, it does hold importance for the exam because this is the latest numbers that we have coming out. So it does give you an indication about at least how the states stand right now, because this is the latest version of the data that we have. So you can't have any better data than this. Summary saying why Niti Aayog of 2020-21 is important for us rather than 2023, because Summer, my dear, this is the survey, that is the index that they have released. I am not giving you old information. Niti Aayog has released this information only last week, so I'm not sure what I can do. Maybe file an RTI for Niti Aayog. Why are you delaying your data? But I don't know. Then I have a question from or statement from Jigar. Controlled population, southern states are reasons for high ranking. Controlled population is one of the reasons. I won't say the only reason. One of the reasons, yes. Apart from that, also prioritizing their spending in grassroots infrastructure, including medical, people being much more aware of government schemes, taking more advantage of that. All these are factors that have led to a better rankings for these states. Then I have a question on by Shiva. Does Niti Aayog tell the government in water disputes and issues? See, the job of Niti Aayog has not really been defined that on what issues will they suggest to the government, what issues will they not. It depends on the government on what issues do they need input from Niti Aayog. Also, whatever Niti Aayog tells the government is never binding on the government. They can reject it, they can just take it as an idea. Usually water disputes are not under central government anyway. Water disputes are usually between two different states, so Niti Aayog doesn't really come into picture. Niti Aayog usually comes in the picture when the central government has some idea on which they want some discussion. If you look at a water dispute will never be between a state and a central government, right? It will always be amongst the states. Niti Aayog usually doesn't come into that. Then I have a question from Alka. PPT and newspaper is sufficient for current affairs? Yes. Whatever you are seeing in this PPT, it will be included in the monthly current affair magazine in the form of articles. So whatever you see, all these articles, all that is in the form of monthly current affair magazine, which you can download from the portal. So it will all be covered over there. Then I have a question from Devo. Why government changed planning commission into Niti Aayog? There are a lot of reasons for that. Planning commission was pretty different. Planning commission, so what planning commission used to do was they used to suggest to the central government how much money to give to the state governments for their 5-year plans. The problem with planning commission was planning commission had no representation from the state governments. Planning commission was entirely made by the central government, no representation from the states. Niti Aayog is different in that sense. If you look at the composition of the Niti Aayog in the governing council of Niti Aayog, all the chief ministers are also members. That is one big difference. While Planning Commission was entirely a central government body, Niti Aayog is center plus state. The second big difference is Planning Commission had powers to recommend distribution of money for 5-year plans to the state governments. Niti Aayog doesn't have any of the power or devolution of finances. So that is a major difference between the two. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next article that you want to discuss, the next news story from the last week or so we want to discuss is something called the PMI, where PMI stands for Purchasing Manager Index. Why are we discussing this? Because manufacturing PMI has recently hit a 31-month high in the month of May. So the simple idea is, what is PMI? How does it work? What does it indicate? This is what we'll be discussing. First thing first, PMI or Purchasing Manager Index is not something published by the government. It is not published by the government of India. It is not published by UN or WTO. No governmental organization publishes the PMI. So what is a PMI all about? PMI actually comes in from a very famous consulting company called the S&P. S&P is one of those companies that gives credit ratings to different countries, their bonds, etc. So S&P Global India Manufacturing, they have published an index called the PMI, Purchasing Managers Index. Now, what exactly is this? In simple idea, what they do is they have identified about 400 different manufacturing companies. So what they do is, once they actually have identified all these different companies, they ask those companies that what is your view about the economy. They ask the companies, are you optimistic about the economy? Are you not optimistic about the economy? Then you are then indicated that you have to make an index based on these manufacturing inputs that are coming in. So the S&P talks to all these 400 companies, talks to their purchasing managers that if they are purchasing something, how is it that they would be able to assess the economy? Are they optimistic about the economy or not? If they are optimistic, they will give a higher rating. If they're not optimistic, they'll give a lower rating. Based on that, the S&P publishes an index called the PMI. Now, how does PMI work? In simple terms, when you look at the PMI, right now, in the month of May, it is at a high of 31 months. In the month of May, it has gone up to 58.7. What does it mean? It means to say that the manufacturing companies are much more optimistic. It means to say that the manufacturing companies are now looking to buy much more as compared to the previous year. This is what the PMI actually tells. Now, how do you see the PMI? Which reading of PMI is good? Which reading is bad? Let's try and understand that. PMI usually is a number that goes from 0 to 100, depending upon the inputs given by the purchasing managers of these companies to the S&P. Usually, if you get a rating above 50 means the manufacturing economy is expanding. On the other hand, if you have a score of below 50, that means the manufacturing economy is contracting, that is, it is declining. If it is 50, that means it has not been changed as compared to the last month, it remains the same. As you can imagine, if let's say in the month of April, the number was 65, in the month of May, it becomes 60, that means the economy is contracting, it is actually going down. On the other hand, if you see the number going up, that means the economy is expanding. It tells you about how much economic activity is going on in the sector, mainly in the manufacturing sector. It is also in services sector. For services sector, there's a different PMI. For manufacturing sector, there's a different PMI. But the reading of 50 usually remains the same. It is, as I said, published by S&P. S&P basically is a very big consulting company, financial consulting. S&P stands for Standards and Poor. Standards and Poor is the name of the company. They usually give credit ratings also to different companies, different organizations, even nations around the world. They have a part called the IHS Market. IHS Market is a part of S&P Global. They are the ones who publish the PMI for over 40 economies around the world. So again, remember the PMI, that is the Purchasing Manager Index, is not published by the government. It has no connection with the government. However, the data is utilized by the government or the government agencies. When the government thinks that yes, the data or the number value of PMI is increasing, that means the economy is expanding, it is doing well, people are purchasing more, people are manufacturing more, the government policies are tweaked in that manner. Similarly, when the rating is declining, when the economy is contracting means it is bringing or it is going down in size, that also leads to an action from the side of the government and the government agencies. That is how PMI is usually utilized. As I said, PMI in simple terms indicates manufacturing and the services sector growth in the entire country. Higher the PMI rating, the more positive it is for the government. The government can then hope that yes, the growth will only improve in the coming months. On the other hand, a low PMI is usually a negative sign, which indicates that it is not really going in the direction that the government of India had wanted. Let's try and answer this particular question. After that, we'll take up some of your comments. Read this question carefully. Let me know once you've read this. Done? Should we begin? Perfect. Start. Ten more seconds to go. And your time is up. 44% people were able to answer this correctly. This is actually C. Only 3 of these statements are correct. Which is the incorrect one? The last one, if you see, is incorrect. Why? It is not an annual survey. We have discussed this time and time again. Multiple times I gave you example also. If you compare April with May, that was again an indication this is a monthly survey. This is a monthly survey, not an annual survey. Every single month, this PMI, that is a Purchasing Managers Index, is published depending upon whatever readings have come in. All these other statements are correct. There are 2 types of PMI, that is manufacturing and services. As I said, government and government agencies can also use this data to tweak their policies. Even the central banks use this data to actually decide on their interest rates. And the third one is also absolutely correct. If you compare month on month, as I said, if in the next month the PMI is lower than the previous month, that means the economy is contracting and it is going down. Fourth is wrong. 1, 2, 3 are absolutely correct. Okay, before moving on to the next one, let me take a few comments very quickly. Dilip, I already answered your question. What is PMI? How it relates to economy? Then I have a question by Sonia. Why market and not market? Okay, Sonia has a question. Why is it called market and not market? Let me answer this in your way. Why is your name called Sonia and not Sonia? The answer is the same. Whatever answer you want, that is exactly the same. Okay, the next question that I have is from Harshda. Harshda is saying, but Finance Commission has been doing the job of recommending devolution of finances while Planning Commission used to do the same. No. See, okay, I'll just clarify something. For those of you who started preparing in the past few years, you might not have read about Planning Commission because you're thing of the past. Let me clarify what Planning Commission was and how was it actually very different from Finance Commission. See, When you talk about finance commission suggest how much money from the central government pool of taxes, whatever taxes they have collected, how much money from those taxes should go to the state government. That is separate. Planning commission was very different. Just like the government of India used to make 5-year plans, that in the next 5 years this is what we want to achieve, every state government in India also used to make their own 5-year plans. Let's take an example. UP let's say UP, Uttar Pradesh government made a 5-year plan that in the next 5 years we want to spend 2 lakh crore rupees on infrastructure. Out of this 2 lakh crore, UP government only has 1.5 lakh crore. So the remaining money they want help from the central government, about 50,000 crore. Whether this help should be given to UP or not for their 5-year plan, this was suggested by the Planning Commission. So recommendation of Planning Commission was different from that of Finance Commission. Planning Commission only used to advise how much money should be given to help with the 5-year plans of the state, and if any money at all should be given or not. Finance Commission was different. Finance Commission is how much taxes central government has earned, they should give some money to the states. Doesn't matter what the 5-year plans are, it's very different. This is very different from each other. That is how these are different. I hope you got this. Kishan is saying, what authorities releases the PMI? Is it the central government? Kishan, I said time and time again, it is not released by the government. It is released by a private company called SNP. Then I have a question from Vishal. On what basis companies are chosen for this survey? So it really depends what SNP thinks are the biggest manufacturing companies. No connection to the government at all. It, since it's a private organization releasing an index, they can choose whichever manufacturing companies they want. Urvashi saying, why PMI depending on rating or leading? Urvashi, I have no idea what you want to ask. Maybe you'll have to form this sentence again. Why PMI depending on rating or leading? I am not sure what that sentence means. So maybe you'll have to tell me better what that sentence actually means. I have no idea. Okay, let's move on. Okay, before I do that, there's one more question. Jigar, can it can be politically influenced as questions are asked to the manufacturers? See, Jigar, everything can be politically influenced. What you want to eat today can be politically influenced. Where do you go out to have a picnic? Which movie you see? Everything can be politically influenced. So there's no matter debating whether is it politically influenced or not. Everything can be possibly politically influenced. So I'm not sure which is a thing that is not politically influenced. Everything can be. Jafni is saying difference between manufacturing and services PMI. Jafni, in manufacturing PMI, you talk to manufacturing companies that tells you about health of the manufacturing sector. In services PMI, the index is based on the input by services companies that provide services. So it is based on that. That is the simple difference. Then Lekha is saying, why government decides interest rate based on PMI? Lekha, no, I never said government decides interest rate. The question was RBI decides interest rate. That is very different. RBI decides interest rate based on a lot of things happening in the market. PMI is one of them. It gives you a good indication. Then Shanawaz is saying, what is the sample of this report? Is it the same for all states? Shanawaz, if I'm not sure you're talking about the first topic or second topic. If you're talking about the second topic, PMI, I told you sample is 400 manufacturing companies. Then I have a question from Arya. Does states get any benefit if they get good ranks on Niti Aayog report? It's an interesting question. See, see Arya, what happens is, let's say a state does better on the health index. The hope is that they can now tell their people, see, I did so much better on the health index, you should vote for me. That is the only hope. Why do the states want to do better? Why would the states actually want to have a better ranking? It brings, or it, they can tell the people, see, vote for me when I was in power, our state was doing this and that. And let me ask you in this other way. Okay, let me ask you in some other way. Tell me this, if India tomorrow wins the cricket world cup, okay, what would you gain out of it? What would India gain out of it? Just think about this. If India wins the World Cup tomorrow, what will happen? Would something change in your life? Would something change in India's life? What would happen? Nothing will change, but you will feel happy, right? You will just feel happy. You will feel proud that, see, my country is at the top. That is the only thing that will happen, as simple as that. Similarly, when you say that your state is at the top, the imagination is that maybe you will feel better. You will tell your politicians to work in that regard. As simple as that. Nothing else happens from that. As simple as that. Let's move ahead then. The next topic that we have is something called the Exposat. Now, what exactly is Exposat? How does it work? The simple idea, why is it in the news? Recently, there was a conference organized by ISRO where there was a statement made by the ISRO chief about Exposat. It is an upcoming mission of ISRO that will be released somewhere in 2023. The idea is simple. The idea is to explore more about the space. It will help us in telling the origin story of the space. It will study the bright astronomical X-ray sources that exist in the space. The idea is to identify from where these X-rays are coming in, and maybe we can utilize that data to do more research about how the story of the universe unfolded, and maybe we'll get to know in the future how will the universe actually expand or how will it go ahead. Right now, there is only one single statement made by ISRO about Exposat. Not a lot of details have come out. The status of Exposat is, as per ISRO, it would be released somewhere in the year 2023. It is scheduled that it is near completion right now. It will be detecting the source of the X-rays that are coming in the space in the open area. That is what their idea is. Exposat stands for X-ray polarimeter satellite, so it's kind of a satellite only. Something very similar has been done by NASA also in the past. This will be the world's second such mission which uses X-rays. An earlier mission was sent by NASA. It was called IXPE, Imaging X-ray Polarimeter Explorer. Now, please remember something over here, especially when you talk about news stories in the field of space, in the field of space missions, etc. You usually see these kind of questions in the prelims examinations where the UPSC might just give you the name of this mission and they will ask you with which country is it associated. With which country is it associated? So these kind of facts, these small little names that come in, you should make a note of it and remember which country or which space agency specifically is related to which of these missions that are in the news. So NASA's mission was launched in 2021. We are trying to do a similar kind of a thing in our Exposat mission, which stands for X-ray Polarimeter Satellite. This is how it will be looking like. Again, you don't have to draw a diagram for the UPSC. You don't have to worry about that part. Now, what will it do? It will mainly have a polarimeter in the X-rays and X-ray spectroscopy and timing. It will be sent to the low Earth orbit. The idea is simple: to make sure that we can detect the X-rays as accurately as possible, which will give us a lot of idea about many unknown mysteries in the entire ocean, in the entire universe, I'm sorry. For example, we are hoping to get much more information about the black holes, the neutron stars, galactic nuclei, etc. All of this can be deciphered at least a bit if we are able to decipher all these X-rays, the sources that are coming in. The more of these scientific payloads that you can send to the space, the better your reading would be, and the better chances you will have to unfold all this mystery of the entire universe. ISRO is also working on many different types of missions apart from this Exposat, which you should know. There's Aditya L1, where we will be trying to observe the sun. There is Chandrayaan 3, Shukrayaan, there is Gaganyaan mission as well. Gaganyaan mission has been delayed continuously. Gaganyaan is a very, very, very optimistic mission from the side of the government of India. Gaganyaan mission, as you know, is about putting Indian astronauts, that is, the astronauts will go for the first time from India on an Indian spacecraft into the space. There have been Indians who have already gone to space, but they have never gone on an Indian spacecraft. That will be the difference. There have been Indians that have gone on USSR spacecraft, on the American spacecraft, but we are trying to do this with the Indian spacecraft for the first time. We also have the Nisar mission, that is a joint collaboration between ISRO and NASA about global environmental changes around the entire world. All of these are just in examples of what are the different missions that ISRO has planned in the near future. Usually, from the part, okay, first answer this question, then I'll tell you a bit of more about what are the kind of questions that are asked. Let's see if we can answer this first. Read this carefully. Let me know once you have read this. I'll start your question. Five more seconds to go. Only 45%. I thought more people would be able to answer this. Pretty easy question. You could eliminate this very easily. Your answer is B. The first one is wrong. Shukran is not for Mars. Shukran is for which planet? If not for Mars, I just showed it to you. If you remember, I just showed it to you in the last slide. Shukran, India's first orbiter mission to Venus. Shukran is for Venus and not Mars. If you eliminate the first one, you can easily get to the answer by itself. This is 2 and 3. Voyager is about exploring the outer solar system, while Cassini-Huygens is about orbiting the Saturn. Both these are correct. The first one is not correctly matched. Oh, I okay. I am sorry. I think thank you for reminding. I think there's an error in the typing here. There's an error in the typing here. Thank you so much for reminding. This has to be R correctly matched. I think the error in the typing was mentioned. This should not be not. Which of these are correctly matched? Thank you so much for pointing that out. Let's ignore the not for now. The answer in that case would be B. That is 2 and 3 would be correct. The first one would be incorrect in that case. Okay, now a couple of very important things that you have to understand here. First, whenever you read about any space missions by ISRO, by NASA, ESA, whichever space agencies in the news, whenever you read about any space missions, please remember these space missions kind of questions are usually almost never asked in the mains exam. These space related questions, when it comes to different types of missions, etc., they're almost always usually asked in the prelims examination only. Number one. Second thing, whenever you read about these kind of space missions, what exactly do you have to remember? First, obviously remember the agency behind these missions. This is important. Secondly, what kind of a mission is it? What is the entire objective? Is it trying to go to a certain planet? Is it trying to explore a certain asteroid, comet, whatever the idea is? Thirdly, what kind of a mission is it? For example, there are different types of missions. For example, let's say the orbiter mission. Now, orbiter, lander, all these are very different. Orbiter missions are the ones that will only orbit around the planet, that will not land on the planet. Orbiter missions are usually easier ones as compared to the lander missions. The ones where you have to land on the surface, this is where the complication becomes extremely high. The reason why Chandrayaan 2 was not a complete success was that the landing was not really perfect. So whenever you make a note of different types of these missions, whichever mission that you're talking about, please remember which agency is behind it, what is the entire objective, where is it trying to reach, and also what kind of a mission is it. Is it just exploring something? Is it orbiting? Is it landing? What exactly is it trying to do? All these would be the different types of statement that you might get in your question, and nothing more than that. Okay, now let me take up certain questions. Second and third are correct. These are very famous missions that have been launched in the past by NASA. Voyager, for example, is extremely old. Voyager, in fact, Voyager 1, Voyager 2, there are two of these. Voyager 1 was in 1977 itself. Very, very old missions. that have been going on for many, many, many decades now. Okay, let me take up a few questions very quickly. I have a question from Gulam. Can we replace newspaper with DNA, weekly webinar, PPTs, and magazine? Yes, you can. See, I would suggest when you talk about newspaper reading or reading anything, the fact is reading helps you to improve your writing, as simple as that. Whenever you ask anyone how to write better, the first suggestion anyone will give you is if you have to write better, you have to read more. The more you read, the better you write, as simple as that. Because when you see other people's writing, when you see how an entire article has to be written, that tells you the entire flow of how the entire article has to be written. So I would say, if you think that no, reading different types of articles in the newspaper, etc., will waste a lot of time, see, most of the things in the newspapers are being covered in these weekly current affair webinars or in the YouTube channel that we do every single day at 10 a.m. But the fact is, if you actually see the importance of newspapers, apart from the fact that it gives you a lot of that data, those facts, it is also to do with how you can compose an entire answer. A lot of you have passed out from school and college also some time back. You don't really, or you're not really in a habit to write big answers. How to write a big answer, how to make sure that you actually have that flow. This is where reading helps. So the decision whether you want to avoid newspaper reading or not depends entirely upon you. I would suggest, if you're not reading the newspaper, fine, but at least try to make a habit to read something. Read an article or two, even from the website. Any website would be good enough. At least you get a flow of how exactly it has to be written. That becomes much, much better. Then I have a question from Sachin. What does the word polarimeter mean? So polarimeters are usually different types of optical instruments. They are used to basically identify different types of lights. This is how polarimeter uses. So this is what their application is. Different types of lights, how does it work, etc. Okay, let me take up one or two more questions. Both those who are asking, both these Voyager and Cassini-Huygens, both are NASA. Both are NASA. These are name of their missions. Like we had the Mangalyaan. This is how they name their different missions. Both these Voyager and Cassini-Huygens are of NASA. This was their main objective, to orbit the Saturn and to explore the outer solar system. This was the name of their mission, so please don't be confused with that. Perfect. Let's move on then. The next article that we want to discuss, or the next news story that was in the news a few days back, was the Global Slavery Index of 2023 that has come out. Now, the Global Slavery Index just came out last week. As you can see the date here as well. This has a very interesting stake on what is global slavery, what are the countries involved here. The sad part is India is at the top amongst the G20 countries. Let me repeat. It says that India, in terms of slavery index, means in terms of how many people are suffering from modern slavery, is at the top when it comes to at least the G20 countries. Now, what do you mean by modern slavery? How does it work? Let's try and understand that. As you know, slavery is illegal in India. We even have a fundamental right that talks about right against exploitation. But even then, modern form of slavery, as per this index, does exist. India tops amongst the G20 countries at least, as per the Global Slavery Index of 2023. The index says over 1 crore people, that is 1.1 crore people in India, are actually working as forced laborers in one way or the other. Now, let me first give you some information about prelims examination. Who published this? What is the logic behind this? This is published by an organization called Walk Free Foundation. It's a non-government organization. Then the purpose is to assess how much modern slavery exists right now. The data that they take is from the ILO, that is the International Labor Organization, and from the International Organization for Migration. They look into forced labor, human trafficking, exploitation, and they rank different countries based on how much modern slavery usually exists. The countries with the rank at the very top means they are the ones where most of the slavery exists. The countries which are at the bottom means slavery doesn't really exist there. Now, let's look at some of the highlights of the data, and then we'll come to how exactly does the data assess who are slaves and who are not slaves. Now, as per this data, number of people living under slavery has increased by 25% in the last 5 years. A lot of this also has to do because of COVID. Because of COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs and they were able to, or they were forced to now enter into forced labor. Now, what do you mean by forced labor? In simple terms, forced labor is when you are in a situation where you cannot lose or where you cannot resign from your job, where you are forced to work every single day. You cannot leave that work, you cannot resign from that work, you do not have any rights as such. Or let's say there's a situation, and it happens a lot of times in the rural area, especially. Let's say there's a situation where, let's say your father or your grandfather, someone in the family took a huge loan from a person. Now your father or grandfather, the person who has taken the loan, has passed away. So now that will become your responsibility to the next generation. Since you are in the next generation but you don't have money to now repay the loan, you will be forced to become a labor. So it is labor against debt. It is forced labor, that is forced upon you, that you cannot leave your job. All that is an example of modern slavery. All that increased after COVID-19 even much more. It still exists in a lot of different parts of the world, including India. As I said, India is right now, unfortunately, at the top amongst the G20 countries. Amongst other G20 countries, you have China, Russia, Indonesia, Turkey, US, all of these feature in this list. So even countries such as US cannot really say that no, they are out of this. Even they have been named in this list. Now, as I said, what do you mean by modern slavery? It means debt bondage. Debt bondage, as I said, means when you or someone in your family has taken a loan, has taken a debt, they can't repay that, and now they are being forced to work in exchange of that debt. Forced marriage, forced labor, commercial sexual exploitation, all of this, as per this particular index, comes in the definition of modern slavery. It can also take threats, violence, deception, etc. It All of these are a part of modern slavery only. There are a lot of factors that contribute to this. Usually, people who are in bad and weak financial condition, mainly with COVID-19, when you don't have enough good laws to protect people, when you don't have enough government schemes to provide a safety net to the people who require help from the side of the government, all of these are factors that contribute to increasing instances of modern slavery. Even in G20, the slavery of this kind is still present. Now, there's very interesting take on this. If you want to, for example, remove this point of slavery, etc., try and understand this. If you want to remove forced labor, many experts say that removing or stopping forced labor would actually lead to some problems in the world manufacturing sector. Try and understand this. Why is it that the nations around the world want to go and set up their factories in China? What is so special in China? One of the reasons why a lot of these manufacturing companies come to China is, as compared to the Western nations, China has very weak labor laws. In China, the companies can force their laborers to work for 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day. They do not have any labor laws, etc. Because of this, the cost of production in China is much lesser. When the cost of production is much lesser, automatically the product will be made at a cheaper cost, and those sitting in the Western countries can earn a much, much higher profit. So when you talk about slavery of different types that exist even today, even the richest nations in the world are responsible for that. I'm not sure how many of you read this news a few months back. There was a factory in China where some people apparently caught COVID. The entire factory was locked down. None of them were allowed to leave the factory. For many days, they were forced to sit inside. For many days, they were not allowed to go out. These kind of things exist in those countries which do not have laws for the welfare of the laborers. all of that actually leads to the problems that we now call as modern slavery. Yes, everyone wants to remove modern slavery. Everyone wants to have better working conditions for the laborers, especially in the manufacturing sector. But the problem is all these manufacturing, electronics, solar panels, all of that, it is manufactured at a cheaper cost because these countries don't have forced labor, or because these countries don't have labor protection. Tomorrow, when these countries do have labor protection, you will have a situation where the cost of all these things manufacturing will increase significantly. And at the end of the day, common people would have to pay a higher price for that. So common people also would have to take a decision whether they want to eliminate slavery and they're ready to pay the price for that. If they are not ready to pay the price for that, they should then make peace with the fact that there is still modern slavery that exists around the entire world. Now, if you see, slavery, as I said, has a deep impact on the global supply chain. As I said, paying much lesser money to the people, forcing them to work in inhuman conditions, forcing them to work for many, many hours a day, not giving them any off. All of that actually contributes to the form of modern slavery that we see today. The G20 countries import billions of dollars of goods produced by forced labor only. That can be from China, from Bangladesh, from Vietnam. So, on one hand, you can take the moral high ground that you want to remove slavery of any kind. But on the other hand, as I said, removing slavery at the end of the day would not really be that easy because it will impact the global supply chain. It will make the things much costlier. And you have to ask common people, are they ready to pay the price or higher price for that or not? This is the highlight of the index. As you can see here, these are the countries at the very top of the index where modern slavery is at the highest: North Korea, Eritrea, Mauritania, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Tajikistan, UAE, Russia, etc. And then we have these countries here where it is the least prevalent, starting with Switzerland, Norway, etc. These are just top and bottom 10 countries. Now, what has India specifically done to prevent these kind of problems in the country? India has passed a lot of laws, as I said. We, in fact, have fundamental rights also that specifically tell us that we have fundamental right against exploitation. Apart from that, India also has laws called the Bonded Labor Abolition Act of 1976 that talks about outlawing slavery of any kind. But the problem is implementing the law, especially in far flung areas, in the rural areas, becomes a big, big challenge for the executive. So, not really being able to implement the laws properly, not being able to ensure that all these legal loopholes are taken care of, all of that remains a big problem in the implementation of the law. We have not been able to identify those people who are forcing others to ensure or to put into modern slavery. Not just this, a lot of these times, people who are involved in these kind of problems are ones who are in the positions of power, who themselves are either politicians, who themselves are in a position they can force people to work for them. In the rural areas, especially, the problem exists. There are zamindars, there are landlords, etc., who force the people. Mostly they also have strong connection with the police as well. So those who are responsible for taking actions against them, they themselves are making sure that this kind of a problem is not really solved. What can we do about it? These are the different ideas that have been suggested to make sure that all these problems of modern slaveries are addressed. First, to have better laws, have much stronger laws against it, to have anti-slavery measures and climate change plans also. Meaning that, for example, for climate change, if you want the entire world to adopt solar energy, fine. But make it a rule that solar panels should be made by those people who are not involved in forced labor. If you are making your solar panels through forced labor, through bonded labor, then the entire idea of fighting against climate change would not really suffice. Fight against climate change cannot really come in at the cost of people's own human rights. enhance education of the people so that they are able to find better jobs and better opportunities, have much tighter regulations. Also, rehabilitate those people, support those who are involved in slavery. After you have rescued them, give them opportunities, give them different types of options to work. And in the end, hold the big countries accountable, especially hold countries such as the G20 nations, including India, accountable at the world stage, whether they have done enough or they have not done enough to actually resolve this problem of slavery. All these are the ideas that can be suggested or can be written in the mains exam also if there is a question in this particular regard. Let's see if you are able to answer this question, then we'll go ahead and answer some of yours. Should I start your time? Okay. 61% people were able to give the correct answer to this. The correct answer here is C. Both 1 and 2 here are absolutely correct. First, we just discussed about this. Second is also true. Supreme Court also has said in multiple different judgments that not giving minimum wages is also a form of forced labor under article number 23 of the Indian Constitution that forms a part of fundamental rights. So this should be banned. Both these given statements are absolutely correct. This also comes under right against exploitation, that is, not being able to pay or not being paid minimum labor. Okay, I have a lot of questions that have come in the past 10-15 minutes, so I think I will take a lot of time to answer these. Okay, let's see one by one. Um, okay, Kanimoji is saying how the space mission will be asked in the mains. Kanimoji, I said space mission, etc. usually not asked in the mains exam. Rashida is saying answer writing. Rashida, for answer writing, the Thursday webinars are mainly for answer writing. So maybe on the Thursday webinars, you can ask more questions about answer writing. This one is mainly more about the prelims exam. Shri is saying, I'm only reading editorial of newspaper, knowing about other news through CNN, is it good enough? Yes. Tejinder is saying it is difficult for working professional to spare time for newspapers. It's a fact, yes. I don't know what to do. Everyone has 24 hours in a day. You have to make the best use of those 24 hours. So if you are working, obviously you'll have much lesser time as compared to others. You will have to decide how you can make more time. I can't really invent more time for you. This is really a fact. Iruvada is saying, why are we at the top in this type of slavery? Iruvada, we just discussed the reasons: not properly implementing the law, not being strict enough against those who are forcing people to work, not implementing the reforms that are required from the side of the police. All these are reasons for that. Afira, we just discussed about the way forward to decrease forced labor. Priyanka is saying, why is it called modern and not slavery? Because Priyanka, slavery is a word that you used to attach in the historic era where people were chained, etc., and they were beaten up every single day. The modern form of slavery is not exactly the same. You are still forcing people to work, but maybe not in those inhumane conditions. That is the only difference. Then I have a question. Arun is saying, what is at risk product? So, Arun, products made by those people who are at risk, products made by those people who are working as forced laborers, who are not being paid their due, those are usually called at risk products. Ria is saying how climate change will influence modern slavery. As I said, climate change fight is giving a push to making more solar panels and new types of manufacturing is happening. For that, a lot of people, a lot of companies are now depending upon China to make all these solar panels. For their manufacturing, also, you are enforcing people to work as forced labor. That is the connection between forced labor and modern slavery or climate change. Harshit is saying, will increase of machines and AI reduce slavery? See, slavery is mostly for physical work. Machines, yes, they usually do. They reduce any kind of work, AI also. But to what extent, it remains to be seen. Slavery is mostly not because you don't have machine to do a certain type of work. Slavery is because someone took loan from you, they are not able to pay back, because you think that you own the person, so you are making him or her do the job. Slavery is usually not practiced because you don't have machines to do the job. You only anyways have the machines. So yes, to say that machines and AI will reduce slavery, yes, but how much, I'm not really sure. Those who are asking question what the mains answers, I would suggest you to ask these questions the Thursday webinars. That would be much better. So we saying, does bonded agreement between company and employee also comes under modern slavery? So we are not sure what bonded agreement is. If you are referring to the bonds that an employee has to sign with the companies, that you can't leave the job or you have to pay this one money, you are referring to those. Those things are not valid in India. You can leave the company, not pay any money, nothing will happen to you. Don't worry. Anshita is saying, if India were to put restrictions on products coming in from countries having bonded labor, it won't go against WTO's MFN policy. No, so Anshita, what happens is you can still impose taxes against other countries. You just have to prove that you have solid enough reason for that. Doesn't matter if you have given them the most favored nation status, doesn't really matter. You can still impose taxes on them if you can prove that it is against your own idea, against your own national interest. So if you can prove it is against your own national interest, you stand for this, you can put taxes. See what Europe is doing. Europe has decided that if a product comes into their country from a nation that is polluting the environment, they will put higher taxes on that. So it goes against WTO's policy. So India can also do that. Then I have a question from Akash. Forced labor would result in decrease in productivity and efficiency of those workers. Do these factors also hold importance in the minds of those who want to establish their manufacturing units in China? See, Akash, the only factor that is in the minds of the people who want to set up their manufacturing industry in China is to make as much profit as possible, make it at the cheapest cost possible. Since China guarantees that they will be able to make the product at the cheapest cost possible, companies are happy to go to China, as simple as that. Pulkit is saying this index is confidential. It has some hidden geopolitics because European nations always remain at the top in every index. I would say not every European country remains at the top. Look at Belarus; it's a European country, doesn't really remain at the top. You have to understand, yes, the standard of living in European countries is obviously better, but no one can hide the fact there will always be some politics behind this. So maybe it's a mix of the two. As I said, a lot of questions. The more questions you ask, the more I have to take them. So then I have a question from Prajwal. Sometimes these indices are condemned by the government in power to the point that the index ranks India low with the objective to tarnish India's image at the global level. What do you think? Prajwal, doesn't really matter what I think, but yes, see, some of these indices are very funny, like the Press Freedom Index, where India is ranked usually lower than Afghanistan. Press Freedom Index, we are lower, we are ranked Afghanistan. This is a pretty interesting joke. Yes, I'm not saying all these indices are perfect and they have to be accepted. Neither does the government accept all of those. As simple as that. Then I have a question from Pravalika. If slavery is more, then poverty is also high, but all G20 countries are also rich. No, no, no. If slavery is more, poverty is high, there is no connection between the two. The entire country is not a slave. When we say there is slavery, let's say out of 100 crore people, 1 crore are slaves, others are enjoying a rich life. So you can't say the slavery is more, the entire country will be poor. There's no connection between that. Then I have a question from Akshit. Does this index really affect the condition of the workers? I won't say the index affects the condition of workers. The other way around, the condition of workers is taken into consideration to make the index. Let's look at it that way. Uh, Then I have question from Abhishek. Why do we need to abolish modern slavery? It's good for economically weaker section. See, slavery is not good for any country, for any section of the society. Slavery means that you don't have any rights. Doesn't matter how poor you are, you deserve certain rights, and that is why you need to abolish slavery. As simple as that. Lopita is saying being on top of this index is bad. Yes, Lopita, being on top of this index is bad. Then I have two more questions to go. Shilata is saying if China has constitution, why they not care about their own citizens? There's no connection between having a constitution and caring about citizens. So let's first take that out of the question. Secondly, yes, they do have their own constitution. They care about their laborers. Just that it's a different country as compared to us. Let's just look at it that way. As simple as that. Guys, the more questions you ask, the lesser time we would have for the remaining topics. So the choice is yours. The more questions coming in, I'm taking those because the SME has flooded me with all these questions. So I'm taking those. The choice entirely depends on you. Okay. Then I have a question from Joseph. If we embedded slavery mitigating measures in climate change mitigation, will there be a chance it might hamper climate change mitigation as it could reduce productivity of solar panels? Joseph, I won't say it will reduce productivity, but it will obviously increase the price of everything. What is modern slavery? What is forced labor? Forced labor, in simple terms, means when you're forcing someone to work without even paying them wages or without even paying them what they deserve. That is why the products are made at a cheaper cost. So it's obviously a very strong connection that if you remove slavery, obviously everything that is being made will be made at a higher cost. Not just the solar panels, every single thing, your car, your bike, the pen that I have in my hand, the watch that I have, everything will be costlier. The iPhone that you use will be costlier because it will be made by a costlier labor. As simple as that. Then I have a question uh, from Dr. Purnima. How government chooses which NGO report is valid? When the government likes the NGO report, it becomes valid. When they don't like it, it becomes invalid. Let's take that. Then the last question, hopefully the last question from this topic. I don't know how many of you have more questions. Ritu is saying, why such indices are not published by India as it doesn't really matter to any other country? See, if there is no need of publishing an index, what will India gain by publishing an index? I'm not sure. Why don't you publish an index? If you think it's so important, you can also tomorrow publish an index. No one is stopping you. So who publishes an index, who doesn't publish an index, doesn't really matter. You can also publish your own index. No index is binding on anyone. For example, tomorrow if I publish an index that this is the best student in India, this is the second best student in India, this is the third best student in India, would it make any difference to you? No. As simple as that. The only difference it will make it will increase your syllabus to read about one more index for the UPSC exam and nothing else. Just when I was trying to go to next topic, I have one more question. SME, I would request you if you want me to continue, maybe you can stop sending me questions or maybe we can just carry on about slavery. Okay, I have one more question. I won't take the name because you will now criticize the student. Okay, the question is, why don't the forced laborers of China protest against their government? Forced laborers of China do protest against their government, but their government is pretty different from ours. Their government don't like protest. When you protest against Chinese government, they fire at their own citizens. They move tanks on the roads. They have killed their own citizens just because they have been protesting. I hope this is the end of your questions because this is looking like slavery at my end. So let's go ahead with this forced labor. Okay. So the next question, the next topic that you want to take up is People Biodiversity Register. Now, what exactly is People Biodiversity Register? How does it work? Let's try and understand this. The government of India has said that they want to make People's Biodiversity Register in every single village. What is the entire idea? In simple terms, the idea is that we want to make sure that there is a proper index, there is a proper detailed report of different types of species, etc., found in every single village so that we can keep a track of that, we can protect them, we can preserve them if there is any threat that they are facing. The government of India wants to have that at every single village. They have just launched it starting from Goa. It has been launched by Union Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. The entire project is called the National Campaign for Updation and Verification of People's Biodiversity Register. As I said, what will it have? It will have conservation of different types of habitats that will be taken care of. It will be maintained in a record. Preservation of the different races of the land, folk varieties, domesticated stocks, breed of animals, even microorganisms. All of this will be taken into consideration so that we have a proper database of all of these different types of species living in different parts of the country. Now, we have multiple different laws in India, especially for the conservation of wildlife or the conservation of biological diversity. We have something called the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. This act talks about promoting conservation, documentation of biological diversity, preserving them, and using them only for sustainable uses. Also, we also have local bodies in states and union territories. We have something called the BMC, that is Biological Biodiversity Management Committee at different levels. They are formed at the state levels also, and they are formed at the district levels as well to maintain a record of different species that exist in their states and species that exist in their districts as well. These are called the biodiversity management committees. What will they do? They will ensure that we are preserving every single bit of biodiversity as much as possible. We are not using it to such an extent that we are forcing it to become extinct. This is also in line with something called LIFE. Did you read about that? We discussed about life also in some of the earlier webinars. Do you remember what was life? Yes, so most of you remember. This was an initiative by Prime Minister Modi. If you don't remember, listen to this carefully. LIFE, Lifestyle for the Environment, was an initiative started by the Prime Minister of the country. The idea was that if you want to save the world against climate change, rather than just making big changes at the national level or at the international level, we also have to make small changes in our own individual lifestyle. So the way you actually consume an energy, the way you use, for example, do you use public transport or do you use private transport? Do you walk to areas where you can walk or you are taking a vehicle? Are you switching off the light or not? Are you utilizing only as much water as you require or not? All of this collectively is lifestyle for environment, that is LIFE. That was an initiative started by our prime minister, where he said that, as I said, at the lower level also, if you want to make changes or if you want to stop climate change, at the lower level also you need to make certain changes in the way that you live your life. This is what Biological Diversity Act of 2002 also wants to do. It just doesn't just wants to preserve wildlife and biodiversity, it also wants to ensure equitable benefit sharing. Equitable benefit sharing means if we have some kind of benefits from biodiversity, if something new has been found, the benefit of that should be shared amongst everyone and not just with some specific parts of the population. Now, India has always been regarded as a country which is extremely rich in terms of biodiversity. Although we have only 2.4% of the Earth's land area, but India has about 7 to around the world. There are 36 biodiversity hotspots. 4 of them are in India. Which are these 4? The Himalayas, the Western Ghats, the Indo-Burma area, and the Sundaland. You know what is Sundaland? Where this is exactly? Any idea? Yes. So no, not Sundarbans, not Sundarbans. This is not Sundarbans. Yes, many of you are correct. This is actually India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and it also has many islands of Indonesia. So many islands of Indonesia, India's Andaman Nicobar Islands, that area is called the Sundaland. This is the 4th biodiversity hotspot in India. Remember, there are 4 different ones. Burma is the old name of Myanmar. It is the old name of Myanmar. So as you can see, India, Burma, and Sunderland are throughout South Asia, not just India. It goes beyond India as well. But India has total of 4 biodiversity hotspots in the entire world from the total of 36. Now, in India, apart from the Biological Diversity Act of 2002, India also is a party of an international convention called the Nagoya Protocol. Now, what do you mean by Nagoya Protocol? Nagoya Protocol is a convention that says commercial and research utilization of genetic resources should be with shared benefit. Please try and understand this. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Basically, Nagoya Protocol was that there are genetic research going on around the entire world. Let's say America is undertaking some genetic research, trying to invent a new species of plant or animal. Japan is doing their own research, India is doing it, Canada is doing it. The idea is if any country is successful in their genetic research, that can be helpful for everyone, then the benefit of that research should be shared by all these countries in the world and not just that specific country. This is called the Nagoya Protocol. Again, Nagoya Protocol is if there is any breakthrough in genetic testing, genetic resources, there is benefit that needs to be had from this research. It should be shared amongst all the nations and not just those nations that are conducting that research. India is also a party of this Nagoya Protocol. India's laws, such as the Biological Diversity Act, they are also in line with this because India also says that whatever research etc has been happening, whatever breakthrough will we get, the benefits of that will be shared as much as possible. India also is trying to manage our biodiversity in a decentralized manner. Decentralized manner means we don't really want to have all these laws and initiatives at the center level only. At the center level, at the state level, and even at the local level, the law has made different types of authorities. We have something called the National Biodiversity Authority at the national level. We have the state biodiversity boards. We even have the biodiversity management committees at the local district levels as well. All of these keep a track of biodiversity in their own jurisdiction. They keep a track of the situation improving or deteriorating. They also suggest to the government if certain actions have to be taken for preservation of biodiversity in their jurisdiction or not. This is how India's biodiversity is being preserved, not just at the national level, but at the state and at the local level also. Now, there are many challenges because of which biodiversity is hurt and is declining. First big challenge, invasive species. What do you mean by invasive species? Invasive species, in simple terms, means species that don't belong to that area, that come in from outside. For example, let's say in India or in a certain state, if all of a sudden you introduce a new species from outside, it might impact the entire food chain. It might start eating up a certain animal, and that will lead to a lot of detrimental impact on the entire food chain. Invasive species have led to 40% of all the animal extinction. Again, invasive species means species that doesn't belong to that area, not a part of the natural food chain. You are forcefully bringing them from outside for whatever reason, and you are now disturbing the entire food chain. Global warming, climate change is also leading to a lot of loss of biodiversity, flora and fauna both. Marine biodiversity is also choking. Why? See, when these big fishing activities happen, when you have these huge trawlers etc, when you are fishing in large quantities, fishermen also take out very small fish from the ocean. The problem with that is when you take out fish that are very small, that have not even gone to their reproductive stage, the problem is you are breaking this reproduction cycle of the fish or different types of marine organisms. So even these fishing activities, when they go along beyond a certain limit, they also hurt the marine biodiversity, because of which even the fishing activities etc have to be regulated in most parts of the world. They're also concerned about genetic modification. There can be genetic modifications naturally also as the species evolve, depending upon the different challenges that they have been facing, or there have been instances of genetic modification carried out in the labs as well. When you try to interfere and forcefully make a change in the cycle of the nature, that might also have a negative impact on biodiversity as well in the long run. Now, internationally, there is a very famous law or very famous convention called the Convention on Biological Diversity. India is also party to it. It was signed in 1992. India became a party to it in 1994. It has three main objectives. First, to conserve biodiversity in the individual countries. Second, sustainable use of all the components of biodiversity. For example, let's say there is a very interesting kind of a plant or a tree that has been found that has medicinal properties. You can't just exploit that so much that it stops to grow. There has to be a proper sustainable manner of using anything that is present in your environment. Then free and equitable sharing of benefits that come out from genetic resources. This is a part of the Nagoya Protocol only, similar to what Nagoya Protocol was. All these are parts of Convention on Biological Diversity. Again, it's an international convention, and India is also a party to this convention. Let's see if you can answer this question. Read this pretty carefully. It's a long question, and then I'll take up if you have any doubts. 'Should we begin? Okay. Ten more seconds. %65 people got this right. This is C. All these three given statements are correct. We have discussed about all these three given statements. 4 of the 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world are in India. The Convention on Biological Diversity I just discussed was signed in Brazil in 1992. And third is also right about the Nagoya Protocol. This talks about sharing of any benefits that come out of genetic resources and their utilization. All these three given statements are absolutely correct. Perfect. Before I move on, let me take up if there are any questions. Ananya has a question. Though Nagoya Protocol is good for the worldwide development, will it somewhere affect the sovereignty of a country? I see the point is, if let's say India signs this protocol, okay? When you sign a protocol, you are not just signing it thinking that I will have to share my knowledge with the world. You are signing it hoping that now other countries will also help you. So, at a time when the protocol comes out, it's a choice of the country. You may sign it, you may not sign it. So, if a country really thinks that it is against my sovereignty, then you should not sign it. As simple as that. The reason why any country, or including India, the reason why we sign it is not just thinking that we will have to give them our knowledge, because the contrary is also true. You will also get knowledge and resources from the other countries. So I don't think it goes against sovereignty as such, because again, you had a choice. You may not have signed any protocol or convention. You did it hoping that you will also get benefits out of it. So when you're hoping to get benefits out of other nation, you should be ready to do that as well, to share your benefits. As simple as that. Polke saying it's a two-edged sword. I won't say it's a sword or anything. See, that is how the entire world works. You become a part of a certain group, hoping that you will get help from a certain group, but then the social contract is that you will also have to give help to the group when they require it. As simple as that. That's how friendships are. That's how any grouping is. When you make friends with any people, you help them and they also help you out. Doesn't really matter that only you are the only ones who are falling sick time and time again. If they also fall sick, they will also get take help from you. As simple as that. Okay. Yes, it's a win-win situation. Perfect. Let's go on then. The next article that we have, specifically, this is a kind of a news that you might expect in the prelims examination. There's something called the ambergris. Why is it in the news? Wildlife officials have seized 16 kg of ambergris from Virodnagar or near Virodnagar. Now, what exactly is this? Why is it in the news? Why is it so important? Let's try and understand this. Basically, in simple terms, the ambergris is considered to be a kind of excreta of sperm whales. It comes out of the body of the sperm whales just like you excrete. The sperm whales also throw this material. It's a waxy kind of a substance that they throw out from their body and then it floats in the ocean. This is called ambergris. It's a material that comes out from the digestive system of this whale. Now, there are a lot of different types of ideas and studies about how is it formed, how does it come out. Some people used to say it's the vomit of the whale, but scientists have discovered it's not really the vomit of the whale. It's mostly like the feces, like the human waste that you excrete from your body. In the similar manner, it comes out of the body of the sperm whale. So many people believed it was the vomit, but it's more got to do with the waste coming out of the body rather than actually the vomit. Now, it also has a odor which is very, very strong fecal odor. The odor very similar to how the waste odor will be. It is produced in the digestive system, in the gastrointestinal system of the sperm whale. Now, how exactly does it work? Why is it important for humans? First of all, when I read this, by the way, I was so amazed that humans can make use of anything. Just imagine you go to water, you see this huge fish. Your first reaction would be to run away from the fish, but you stay there. You think, how can you use this fish? And then this fish excretes something out of the body. The first reaction when you see this excrete out of the body would be to run away, to not even touch it, right? But not just you touch it, you then feel it, you conduct all these tests, and then you start using it in the perfumes. So you have to agree that humans are by far the most innovative species. Who would think that let's look at this way, let's take out their excreta, and then let me make something. And then you make perfume, you sell it for thousands of rupees, and then you flaunt your perfumes without even telling anyone that this perfume animal. But anyways, good luck to your perfume. So if you actually see, this is light yellowish in color. But again, this is how human beings are, right? We make use of every single thing. This is light yellowish. This is fatty. It turns into waxy substance at a later stage. It becomes brownish, red, gray, etc. The more I see this, the more I think I'm defining human excreta. I don't know. Yellowish and turns waxy, brownish, black. I don't know what. Basically, you understand the idea, right? You understand the idea. I don't have to go into details of this. All of you understand the idea. Now, the interesting part. The interesting part is this is the cost usually in the market where it is sold illegally. It is somewhere between 1 to 2 crore rupees per kilogram, depending upon how pure it is, depending upon how better the quality of this whatever material is. It is also banned in many countries around the entire world. As I said, it is made or it is used for making perfumes. It has notes of musk. So those of you who like musk perfumes, you know where to go. This is how it is actually used. Not just this, it's also used to flavor food, alcoholic beverages, tobacco. So fond of alcohol and tobacco, you don't know the next time you're eating alcohol what exactly is in that alcohol. So this is how all this waste material coming out of this whale is used. There are many countries, as I said, who have banned it already. There is ban in US, Australia, and India and many other countries, while it is tradable in certain countries with certain limits that is put on them. In India, what we have done is we have put sperm whales in Schedule 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act. As you know, Wildlife Protection Act has different schedules of animals depending upon how important they are, depending upon how exactly protected they are. For example, animals in the first schedule are the most protected. Killing them, harming them will give you the maximum punishment. Then schedule 2, 3, 4, that is how it usually works. So they are in the schedule 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act. Because this material, the ambergris, is so valuable, it is also black marketed around the world. It is black marketed in coastal areas also, and countries which have more easier laws about these kind of products. And thus I have a question about this. Let's try and see if you can answer this, and then I'll answer some of your questions. Read this carefully. Done? Read this? Okay, let me start your time. Forty percent people got this right. The answer here is B. Two statements are wrong. Which one is incorrect? The second one is incorrect because it is not made by white whales, it is made by sperm whales. Not white whales, but by sperm whales. Second statement thus is wrong. First and third statements are correct. First, let's look at this. It protects the whale's internal organs from sharp squid beaks. So what happens is, it is assumed that this kind of a material, the ambergris, it forms a layer around the organs of the whale. When the whale eats certain small fish, squid, etc., that have very sharp kind of beaks, so that these beaks don't harm the internal organs of the whale when they eat them, this ambergris helps them in making sure that it doesn't really damage any of the internal organs. Third is also true. As I said, many people believe that whales actually emit this out of their body through vomiting. Although it is not true now, it has been proven it comes out of the whale body like the excreta. It's not like vomiting. But for many years, it was believed it's like a vomiting from the whale. That is why it's called the whale vomit. However, now it has been proven it is not a vomit. It comes out in the form of waste. Second statement is wrong because it is produced by sperm whales. Okay, let me take up a few questions before I go ahead. Um, Harshda has a question. But if sharing knowledge about it, what about the Copyright Act? Harshda, that is not how Copyright Act works. Copyright Act basically is for the individuals, the companies who are making something new. When you're talking about knowledge sharing, it happens at the nation to nation level. That is what the Nagoya Protocol is. And again, if a country has a problem with sharing of knowledge, no one is forcing you to sign the protocol. If a country has signed the protocol, then obviously they agree to sharing of the knowledge. As simple as that. Ifat is saying, why is this in the news? Ifat, ambergris is in the news because they have been found, 16 kg of them have been found just a couple of days back in India, illegally being smuggled. That is why it is in the news. Okay, I'll take a question which is very interesting. Kapil has a question. If ambergris is a waste and naturally occurring phenomena, then why is it banned to trade? It's a very good question. So, and other people also have a similar kind of question. If it is a waste, then why do you ban it? See, the problem is yes, it is a waste. Okay. The problem here is if you don't ban it, tomorrow you will see fishermen actually killing the whales, hoping that when they cut open the whales, they will get this material out of the whale body. This is where you will have to regulate this. Because, see, when you have something which is extremely precious, sell at a very high cost, you will always have people trying to forcefully now take it out. Maybe, let's say, not kill it, trying to capture the whales, have them there, or have them basically breed personally, have them in their captivity, so that when they bring out this material, so that they can capture it. This is why there have been regulations made on these kind of things, so that you don't start harming the animal thinking that now you can extract it in a much bigger quantity. That is why usually it is banned. Okay, now let's come ahead. The next news that we have is the new CVC. The new Central Vigilance Commissioner has been appointed very, very recently, just last week. I'm sure all of you would have read about the Central Vigilance Commission. What does it do? Central Vigilance Commission, the CVC, is supposed to have three members: one Chief Vigilance Commissioner, and then there have to be two other vigilance commissioners. So there can be maximum of three. What do? They are responsible for fighting against corruption in the government offices. So you go to a government office, you have a case of corruption, you think that yes, there are certain issues, someone is asking you for a bribe, they are not doing their job properly, you can report this to the CVC. Most of these agencies now have an online portal. You can go to online portal of the CVC, register a complaint, and then they will look into those kind of complaints. The CVC was first established as an executive body in 1964. Do remember that? It later on became a statutory body. So today's CVC is a statutory body because the parliament passed an act in 2003. But when it was first established, it got established in 1964 only as an executive body. What is the difference between the two? Executive body means body established because the government just passed an executive order. The government gave an order, signed on it, the body got created. Statutory body means that the parliament passed an act for that specifically. So it became a statutory body recently. It first started as an executive body. What does it do? As I said, it takes up complaints against corruption, abuse of power. Then they try and see if investigation can be done at the department level. If not, they can refer the matter to the CBI also. So they can refer the matter to CBI to investigate into corruption related cases mainly. They also try and protect the whistleblowers. Who is a whistleblower? The whistleblower is a person who brings out the news of corruption, who brings out some news from any agency, from within or from outside, telling that there's corruption over here. That person is called the whistleblower. As you know, in India, we have the Whistleblower Protection Act as well. So in India, if you file a complaint with the CVC, your identity will be kept a secret. The CVC is responsible for making sure that the identity of the whistleblower remains a secret. Their identity should not be disclosed because then it will be a danger to their life. What do? As I said, they give directions to the CBI, mainly about Prevention of Corruption Act cases. They tell the CBI to conduct these kind of investigations. They also assess the progress made by different types of cases in the CB, by the CBI and different types of cases of corruption. They also make sure that they work with the vigilance administration in different ministries. So every different ministry of the government of India would have a separate vigilance department. Vigilance department means a department that is working to control corruption in every single ministry. I'll give you a simple example. Let's assume you go to the RTO to make a license or to get a license made. Now, the problem here is in that particular office, someone asks you for a bribe. You go and complain to the CVC. What will the CVC do? CVC will contact that RTO or the transport department. They will ask their own vigilance department to conduct the inquiry, and the CVC will overlook that inquiry. They will see what the results are. If they are not able to conduct the inquiry, then the CVC may ask the CBI to come in and conduct the inquiry. They also undertake complaints under public interest disclosures. They try to make sure that any complaint is resolved as quickly as possible. Again, it is all done online. They have even been given the power to keep a track of the corruption related cases that the CBI is trying to solve. The CVC, as I said, three-member body, chairperson, and two vigilance commissioners. But the problem here is, now if you see, for many years, CVC, usually government only appoints one person. For many years, these two offices or the two posts of vigilance commissioners are empty. The government only appoints a chairman, chief vigilance commissioner, from the side of the president of India. The other two seats have been vacant for a long time. President appoints them on recommendation of a three-member committee: Prime Minister, Home Minister, and the opposition members, the opposition leader of the Lok Sabha. These three together recommend a name to the president, and the president then appoints the CVC of India. Remember the interesting part, that is a tenure. CVC has a tenure of 4 years, and 65 years till that is the age till the time that the CVC can work. Also, please remember, once the tenure is complete, they cannot have any other employment under the central or the state government. One other interesting part, how is the CVC removed from the job? CVC's removal is the same as a UPSC member. Same as UPSC member. Just like the UPSC member or a UPSC chairperson is removed, exactly the same manner is the removal for the CVC. How? President can remove them, but first the president has to give the Supreme Court a chance to conduct an inquiry. The Supreme Court will conduct an inquiry and see if the person is guilty in any of these things. If he is insolvent means bankrupt. If he is convicted of any offense, if the person has any other paid employment outside the office, if he or she has acquired any other financial interest that will impact the working, it is a similar manner in which a UPSC member or UPSC chairperson is removed. Supreme Court will conduct the inquiry. If they think the person is guilty of any of these, they will suggest the president that yes, the person should be removed, and the president will then give the order for the removal. This is again exactly the same manner in which the UPSC chairperson, UPSC members are removed. This is also the same manner in which Lokpal will be removed. Same manner in which the Central Information Commission will also be removed. In Indian polity, I would just suggest you to remember two things or two ways of removal. One, the removal of Supreme Court judge. Removal of Supreme Court judge is the same as High Court judge removal, same as removal of CAG, same as removal of Chief Election Commissioner also. And the second removal that you should remember is the removal of UPSC chairperson. Same for CVC, same for Lokpal, same for Central Information Commission, same for National Human Rights Commission. All of those are the same. Just remember these two and you would be good to go. Let's try and answer this question, then I'll take up some of your comments. Read this carefully. Should we start the time? Okay. Ilyas, yes, CVC does have investigating powers, but they can also give the case to CBI for investigation. %54 people got this right. This is C. Both the given statements are correct about the Central Vigilance Commission. As I said, it's an executive authority responsible for monitoring vigilance activity. Vigilance means anti-corruption. This was established on the recommendation of the K. Santhanam Committee, As I said, it was first established as an executive body. Later on, it was turned into a statutory body. So right now, it is a statutory body. Okay, before I start the last topic for the day, I have a few questions. Let me quickly take up a few questions. Um, okay, Shweta has a question. As we have biodiversity mechanism at national, state, and district level already, now village level mechanism, will it not become hard to coordinate with all biodiversity mechanism? No, 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 Shweta. So don't think that village mechanism will have to coordinate with all of them. They'll just have to coordinate with the upper level, that is a district level. It's not that everyone has to collaborate with all the other level mechanisms. You just have to collaborate with the one that is on top of you. Dilip is saying, as like judge remove is also applied to CVC. Dilip, I think you have to form your question a better way. Your question is, as like judge remove is also applied to CVC. I'm not sure what you're asking. Kapil is saying, how solvency is a circumstance for removal of CVC. Kapil, I think you mean to say why. See, the reason why insolvency is usually regarded as one of the reasons for removal is because when a person is insolvent, means bankrupt, that means person is in a vulnerable situation. The person is much more liable to go ahead and take a bribe, earn some money legally. That is why insolvency is usually kept like that. That it's a reason for removal. Polkit is saying, despite having CVC, Lokpal, corruption in India remains high. What can be done? See, it's not that easy. Corruption, etc., don't really go away just by making a law. It's more about implementation. It's more about how the law is actually implemented. It can't be done overnight. There has to be a big change. Examples have to be set. The legal system has to become much tougher. The earlier that you give punishment to people, the better example that you set, lesser will be the chance of corruption. As simple as that. Then I have a question from Veena. Why CVC forwards a case to CBI if it has investigating powers? That's not true. See, CBI consists of people who are professional investigators who have been trained many years to investigate a certain matter. CVC can take up investigations on the ground level basis, but when they have to investigate a case, like properly investigate, then the CBI obviously has the specialty. Ragini Singh, for removal of higher government officials, why the president approval is needed? Ragini, because the logic is, whoever appoints you, your removal can be done either by that authority or a higher authority. As simple as that. Again, whoever appoints you, your removal can be done either by the same authority or by a higher authority. So central government officers like these are appointed by the president of India only. So they can't be removed at a lower authority because that is not possible. That's not how the law works. Your removal authority has to be either the same as the appointing authority or higher than the appointing authority. Nothing is higher than the president of India. So that is why, since the appointment is done by president, the removal will also be done by the order of the president only. One more thing about the CVC, as many of you are asking this. See, CVC does not have a lot of powers. I'll give you an example. Let's say the CVC conducted an inquiry and the CVC then found out that a person was guilty of taking a bribe. The only thing that the CVC can do is advise the government to take action against the officer. If the government still doesn't want to take action against the officer, if the government still doesn't want to suspend or remove the officer, the CVC cannot do anything. The CVC can only and only advise action against certain officers. The government at the end has to decide whether or not they have to accept it or not. Now we come back to our last topic for the day in the remaining 5 minutes. That is, the city of Ahmednagar will now be renamed as Ahilya Nagar after the famous Maratha queen Ahilya Bai Holkar. That is why it is in the news. It was recently announced by the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. Now, for these kind of logics, or when these kind of things actually come in the news, what happens is, first, what you have to remember, history of the person who is in the news, that is Ahilya Bai Holkar. Ahilya Bai Holkar, as you know, very, very famous Maratha princess, was very famous for introducing a lot of reforms, mainly keeping in mind that women of that era were not really given a position of power. But even then, in that era, she made a lot of changes to the administration. First, second thing that you have to understand is the history of the place that is in the news. So Ahmednagar. Now, Ahmednagar was a area ruled by many different dynasties, the Rashtrakutas, the Western Chalukyas, the Delhi Sultanate. After Delhi Sultanate, they were under the control of the Bahmani kingdom. Now, if you look at the Bahmani kingdom, this is where the name of the place comes in. In 1486, Malik Ahmad Nizam Shah became the prime minister of the Bahmani kingdom. He defeated the king of the Bahmani kingdom and took power. It is on his name that the city was named Ahmednagar. So Ahmednagar named after Malik Ahmad Nizam Shah. Now it is being changed to the name after, or now it is being changed to Ahilya Nagar. Now, if you look at Ahilya Bai Holkar, Ahilya Bai Holkar was herself born in a village of Ahmednagar. The story goes that she actually was one of the few girls to receive an education at that age. Her father was the head of the village, that is Mankoji Shinde. He made sure that the daughter gets as much education as possible. What happened was, army commander of Peshwa Bajirao spotted her as an 8-year old when she was in the temple service, and he wanted her to become his daughter-in-law. He wanted his son, that is Khande Rao, to marry Ahilya Bai Holkar. That is how Ahilya Bai Holkar entered into the royal family and became the wife of Khande Rao. Khande Rao died, but she refused to practice sati. She went on and carried on the administration. She took control of Malwa. She was a great administrator, and also she got a lot of practice and guidance in military tactics and administration from her own father-in-law. She has also been known as a great supporter of female rights, of girl rights in that era, and also made a lot of interesting changes in the administration, gave a lot of importance to the new temples being built. She was also well known, she's also well known for restoration of many Hindu temples in that era. Prime Minister of the country also inaugurated some of the Hindu temples that were built by the Holkars. That is why it was also in the news. Let's see if you can answer this last question, and then I'll take up some of your questions that you have. Read this carefully. Preeti, I'm not audible because I'm not saying anything. That is why I'm not audible. Read this. Read? Should I give you the options? Okay. Your time has started. And your time is up. 56% people got this right. This is actually C. All these three statements are correct. Remember, for changing the name of a state, you need the parliament to come in, pass the law, etc. For changing the name of a city, this is the process. There is no law that has to be passed, an executive order only has to be given. The only point is the state government first should ask the Home Ministry. Home Ministry will look into this. They will take no objection certificate from Railway Ministry, etc., to make sure no other city has the same name, and then they can give permission and the city name can be changed. This is how the name of the city is changed. Sally, the second option is Home Ministry approves this proposal. Let's say Maharashtra government wants to change the name. They will ask the government of India's Home Ministry that we want to change the name. So Home Ministry will ask the Railways, Department of Post, Survey of India to make sure The same name is not used by any other city or town in India, so that there is no confusion. Once they do this, they will give the permission and then the name will be changed. This is how it works. This brings us to the end of today's topics. I have a few questions in front of me. This is the last question where many people had some confusion. So I'll just bring you to this question. Many people had this confusion in first statement. Look at the first statement. It is an autonomous body independent of any executive authority. Absolutely true. CVC itself is a statutory body. The statement is not saying that CVC is an executive body. I'm not sure why you are confused. What is the statement saying? Look at this carefully. Autonomous body independent of any executive authority. So no executive, no minister sits over it. Absolutely true. This is a statutory body. I'm not sure why you're confused, why you were confused in this. Perfect. Let me take a few more questions given to me before we end this session. Uh, Janvi is saying the procedure of changing names. Janvi, the question gave you your answer. Then Ritu is saying, what is the point of CVC when even though knowing the problem, they can't really punish the person? See, Ritu, that is not how you can think about it. No government in the entire world can have any body whose recommendation is binding on them. At the end of the day, the government will always, always, always keep the last power in their hand to decide who will be punished or not. It happens throughout the world. That is how the governments work. You might agree to it, you might not like it, but that is how it usually works. Then I have a question from Sabha. What if we give them constitutional status? Yes, you can. Constitutional status will require a lot of hard work. You have to make constitutional amendments. You can. Sapna is saying, what is the utility of these changes? Why rename these places? I don't know. Ask the people who are changing it. I'm not sure what they will achieve by changing it. See, changing names of places, it's more about telling people, reminding them about the history. But I'm not really sure about how much does it work. The politicians can tell you the answer better why they want to change the names. Then all the questions about renaming roads, etc. Is it a wrong practice or not? Again, there is nothing wrong with the practice as long as it's done as per the law. It is about reminding people about the history. But yes, you can always argue that it's a political decision and not a independent decision. As I said, no benefit to common man, no benefit to common man. Kapil is saying it is seen quite often top executive positions are not placed with permanent deputation like chief CVC, vigilance commissioner. Why government is not appointing them on regular basis? See, Kapil, the logic is these authorities kind of work against the government. Why? Because they are investigating cases against government officers. So no government would want to reduce their power. No government in their complete mind would want to appoint a lot of these bodies. So again, you have to ask the government why they don't do that, but this is what the logic is. Then Arun is saying why CVC became a statutory body. See, when you make something a statutory body as compared to executive body, you can give them some more powers. Statutory body means changing the name of that or changing the powers of that would require the parliament to pass a law. As simple as that. Okay, I'll take one last question. In fact, how will the power of executive body differ from statutory constitutional body? See, there is no difference of powers as such. Constitutional, executive, statutory, they are not really different in powers. The difference is how easy or difficult is it for you to make changes in those bodies. For example, today the government makes an executive body just by passing an order. Tomorrow a new government can come in and pass an order to remove that body. As simple as that. Planning commission was passed as an executive body by Nehru government. Modi government came in, just made an order and removed this. When you make something as a constitutional body, it just becomes difficult for the next government to come in and make changes. So it brings in more stability rather than increasing decreasing power. Okay, the leaderboard, I'll just show you the leaderboard also. But please do remember about the leaderboard. There was one question that was wrong here. So I am not sure if all the people who gave 8 correct are right. You can see the names in front of you, but as you know, one of those questions was not right. So you can take your guess. Perfect. Perfect. This brings me to the end of today's class. I hope you learned something new today. We'll see you soon in the next session. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure that you do avail as much help of your mentors as possible. A lot of your doubts about the preparation, examination, etc., can be solved. Get in touch with your mentor. They will be happy to help you in that case. Thank you so much for joining in. Bye bye. Good night. Jai Hind.